Hey, welcome everyone. It is 8:01 p.m. Eastern, and it is December 19th, 2016. And as you know, because I know our audience has been watching the news, the quote unquote news, the staged narrative that is broadcast out in the guise of news. The Operation Gladio false flags that are connected to the United States election, the upcoming elections, so-called elections in Germany, which are just as rigged as we know. This Operation Gladio nonsense, which operates a lot in Germany. It's mostly a NATO operation, and United States, Turkey, they're NATO countries as well. Turkey's been very interested in joining, or the elements within the Turkish government, I should say. Don't want to fall into my own trap. Have been very interested in getting becoming a member of the European Union. This is all connected, of course, with all the superpowers of the world annihilating Syria and particularly the Syrian people. And these are all staged false flags, government orchestrated Operation Gladio events, if you will, whatever anybody wishes to call it. We're going to break it down. We're going to expose them. And I'm so glad that I've got Glenn Sutphin on the line with me, because he's the a guest that we were talking about having Glenn on the show if he was able before any of this stuff happened. And now we're faced with these obviously staged events. We're going to break them down from the multifaceted purposes behind the events, how they could be possible, how they could possibly take place, and how the official story, they don't really give out that much information anymore, so it can't really be torn apart or anything. But the obvious facts, like in Germany, at the Berlin Christmas market attack right in front of the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, the bombed out remnants of Berlin after the Judeo attack on the German people during World War II, the international Jewry war against the German people. And of course, that takes us back to World War I, of course, with Kaiser Wilhelm and the assassination of the Russian ambassador in Turkey. A lot of foreshadowing and of things to come, and also a lot of nods to the past with these attacks. Of course, just kind of like the Nice, France attacks. I heard some sort of talking head on CNN saying this so-called attack in Germany was like the attack at Ohio State a few weeks ago. There's so much. I don't want to waste any more time, though. I want to get right into it, because I really haven't talked to anybody about these events yet. So I want to hear Glenn's opinion. Glenn and I normally cover these events, and we have in the past covered false flag events in person, in real time. So, Glenn, welcome to the show. Great to have you back. This is press correspondent Glenn Sutphin. Thanks for joining us, and please, what are your thoughts on today's events?
Well, first I'd like to thank you for having me on again. And they're psyops. I mean, they're plain and simple. I watched the video of the guy getting assassinated. There's no blood. There's no body injury to him. He goes down quicker than the building of 9/11. He just falls. You hear bang, bang, bang. He falls down, and he's dead. And then the dude makes a statement. He's standing there shouting and screaming, making a statement, posing like Saturday Night Live, or Saturday Night Fever, excuse me. And then he waits for the people to shoot him. It's totally...
Glenn, real quick, didn't they show this man also kind of running away, like they were videotaping him from outside the building, and they show him like running through some corridor towards like stairs or something?
I didn't see that part. I only saw like 2 videos of what was going on. I've been studying the one.
That's another thing that I was very curious about. This guy, this 22-year veteran of the Turkish security services, and I think his name is Mert Altanatis or something like that.
Yeah, some strange name.
Okay, Mert Altanatis is what I have written down, because I was just taking notes. Obviously, everyone knows about the computer issues and attacks we're all getting. If they're listening to the show, if you don't know, our computers, and when I say our computers, my computer, Glenn's computer, the Renegade Network, it's under a lot of attack. So anyways, a lot of this stuff I'm watching the news and I'm reading the bottom feed of CNN and just listening to it, and because it's much easier than for me to operate this computer that is constantly being shut down by some sort of outside source. You can find out information about that on YouTube. I've videotaped it and put it up there. Glenn's had a lot of videos doing the same thing. I don't want to get too much into that, but I just want to say, if I've got the guy's name wrong, I'm just writing it down. And of course, Andrei Karlov is the Turkish ambassador, and we know that within a very short period of time after the alleged incident, Erdogan, the Turkish prime minister, and Putin were on the phone together. And the word out of the Turkish government and the word out of the Russian government is that they don't want this to be a monkey wrench thrown into the warming relations between Russia and Turkey. And of course, Glenn, you and I have talked many times, and you've produced videos where I'm on live television with officials from Russia and other countries talking about these events with Turkey in particular, and the Turkish government, and the Turkish government in relation to Syria, and also in relation to this refugee crisis. And the alleged shooter, this 22-year veteran of the Turkish security services, who, may I add, seems to be the only security that this ambassador, this Russian ambassador, has, is just this one guy that comes up behind him, unloads multiple rounds in his back, and then gives some sort of short impromptu, here's why I did it, here's how I did it. Hey, and anybody else out there, God is great, Allah Akbar, and also don't forget Aleppo in Syria.
Right.
Don't forget Aleppo, and posing like John Travolta from Saturday Night Live.
No, Fever. Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I did it too. Saturday Night Fever. I get everything. I got Saturday Night Live on the brain because they put it.
Because they're constantly running Trump and,
Right. So my apologies and thanks. So this is the only guy armed around the Russian ambassador to Turkey.
Yeah.
After all that has gone on in the past 2 years between Russia and Turkey, there's going to be one guy guarding the Russian ambassador, and it's some sort of Turkish security services, and then Putin and Erdogan start discussing things like, hey, no problem. no biggie. Oh yeah, I know you guys shot down a Russian jet, and I know that there's problems going on, but we met. This is pure professional wrestling nonsense, isn't it, Glenn?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's all staged. I mean, I've been trying to watch it, trying to find, like you said, there's no bodyguards. There's no what you would expect to be there is not there. It's totally staged. It's like they walked in and go, hey, let's pretend that we're going to assassinate you, and then they can pretend to assassinate me, and it'll be okay. I mean, it's pretty much.
Hey, and they're using my terminology. They said he was neutralized. I mean, is this guy a real person? Maybe they wrote him off, like they neutralize characters from soap operas and then they come back to life. But
it's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Yeah, one thing we do know is we know that this was maybe some sort of setup. I mean, if this at all happened, which it seems it didn't, because another thing I'd like to point out, besides the physical, what do you call it, forensic anomalies, like, what forensically would happen under the same circumstance in a real situation did not happen in this situation. How this guy was the Russian ambassador, a Russian government official in Turkey with all of the appearances of animus and danger and asymmetrical warfare allegedly between the two countries. We all know that's fake, but we're going to take them at their word. Why is the only guy with a gun at this art opening in Ankara, where it's basically seems like it's nothing but media in there, and this one Turkish security services guy who just all of a sudden, after 22 years, loses his shit and becomes some sort of, ISIS-inspired, maybe. I mean, that seems like the narrative. They haven't said it. We all know ISIS is Israeli secret intelligence service. ISIS is many things, of course, we know. But, hey, the guy starts pointing the gun at the camera because there's a good shot of the guy pointing the gun at the camera. And so if this guy, was really, really a big threat, how come there's like every single angle of this guy and the cameras don't seem to move? The guy seems to be pointing right at a camera and everybody seems to be like, okay, and action. Hold your shot. Okay, Saturday Night Fever post. Oh. Okay, now point your gun at the camera. Okay, now camera 4, get the angle of him from the left side. Now camera 6 from the right side. There's so many different angles of this guy.
Oh, yeah.
And what? Everybody doesn't just like run the opposite direction? And you'd think that if it was live and the camera didn't turn off, which, we've been around some hairy stuff where we've run away and kept our cameras on. So basically there could be a loud noise, an explosion, a rock hurled at my head and grazing the side of my head. Like, I don't turn the camera off, but I don't keep the camera right at the thing I was pointing at, and that's not even gunfire.
Yeah, it sounded like sheet metal, like somebody hitting a trash can or something, and then the dude falls down, and then he does his little spiel, and he poses, and they got to make sure to get his whole face and show him, and he's doing all this stuff. It's like, come on, where was all the security? Where was everybody that was supposed to be there? They weren't there. It doesn't make. And what was the dude doing at the art gallery by himself? I mean, I don't know the circumstances leading up, but they only show, the only thing I've ever seen of the incident so far is they show the minute you hear bang, 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 and then he falls down. They don't show what happened before then. So I'm calling it all staged. I can't find, there's so many inconsistencies. There's no blood. There's no damage to the body. he actually looks like he's got a bullet-resistant vest on when he falls down and is laying on the ground.
Yeah. And,
It's like
I do want to point one thing out now that you mentioned the vest, because there does appear to be some sort of like, kind of some sort of like puffing of the vest,
yeah.
in synchronicity at the same time as that it would appear that it was caused by one of the rounds.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
there was no blood, of course, and now there's pictures where I've gone through a lot, what I could, as the computer was shutting off. I would try to take screenshots and try to get some camera angles and at least look at all the different camera angles. There's some with blood, that looks like the blood has been put in after the fact. And I'd like to point out that there's all these different angles and all these different shots and the live videotaping, which makes sense about, the Andrei Karlov alleged assassination in Ankara. But when it comes to that Christmas market in Berlin, there's nothing.
Yeah. The only thing I've seen is a picture of the vehicle, and it was all messed up. At least this time there was more damage to the vehicle.
Yeah,
there was still no blood on it, but there was more damage. So you can physically see, hey, it might have ran into something.
Glenn, it was a dark vehicle, so they learned their mistake, or all this stuff. They don't do anything by mistake, but they made it a little bit more questionable than they did in Nice, France, because the truck was a light colored truck in Nice. Hey, we're not taking unknown callers. Unknown caller, if you really want to speak, call from a real number, and otherwise we're not going to waste more time. But it was dark at night at the Christmas market in Berlin, and also that they didn't show any bodies. I saw a couple of folks that they had a picture of a couple folks who were being carried away on stretchers. Now, one was completely covered and it was being put in the back of an ambulance. There seemed to be no hurry. It's when you see these staged events, and it seems like that there's drills going on, that these are always a part of a drill, like a Gladio drill, like Operation Gladio drill. Mm-hmm. You and I covered this and on Renegade during the fall, during the Summer of Chaos. We covered it a lot on our online show called Get the News Straight. And also we exposed it every step of the way that this is a drill. There's always drills scheduled that are imitating these exact same things that are taking place. And that's why you don't see the mass carnage.
And you don't see the mass panic, too. You don't see the stuff that you expected. The stuff that you expect to see at these events. Somebody gets shot. I know for a fact you're not walking around going, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to be, it's okay, I'll just stay. No, you're, and running around like crazy, doing all kinds of stuff, and we don't see any of that happening. There's, there's a canned response to these things, and it's like it's on a set. It's like, okay, action, boom, okay, cut. And only that time period that it happens in is the time that, you expect to see all this stuff and you don't see it. It's not there. And I can't put my finger on it for all of these two right now because they're so new. But there's just stuff missing. It's like you expect to see something there and it's not there. And you go, well, where is it? And then the only possible explanation is they staged the event.
Absolutely.
Because
no bodies. No bodies. No. Okay.
Well, even if there weren't bodies, well, like the one guy, the gunman, he shot the guy, and then he gets shot, and they show him laying on the ground with wounds in his side and a little bit of blood on the shirt And it's like, that's not a real bullet hole. There's no hole in the shirt. There's just red stain on the shirt. And it's like, where's the carnage? Where's the aftermath of what I know a bullet does to a body? Glenn, it's not there.
Glenn, let's just delve into the specifics, because over the weekend somebody asked me a question about how I know certain things, or what's my experience, or what I particularly have done in regard to my take on what's going on in Syria. And I discussed how we've been on shows with members of parliament in Syria, and talked to government officials from Russia in regard to what's going on in Syria, and so many other things. So when you talk about what a gunshot does to a human being, you know this from firsthand experience. You've seen it, right?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
I have witnessed it.
Okay,
I have witnessed what it does.
Right, and so it's such an unbelievable, traumatic thing when one person gets murdered, and the actual carnage of just one person getting murdered by a gunshot, and all the blood and what a bullet does to a body, and then when it's what's happening in real life, and everybody panics and flips out, and or some take, just go into a different kind of mode and take some sort of action. That's probably about a 1 out of 100 type person who does that. And that's, of course, like you and I and many of the listeners to Renegade, certainly not all. They haven't been trained, to the point of doing that. But I would say many of the renegades out there are the kind that are armed and ready to fire back, or armed, ready to take cover, and then assess the situation and then fire back from wherever the threat is coming from. Whichever is the best thing to do. But certainly it's not best to have some guy pointing a gun at you after he has allegedly gunned someone else down, and have every camera operator remain calm. Camera's not even shaking, and to get this guy's entire diatribe.
Yeah, and also too, he only aimed at the guy and didn't. Nobody in the audience. He didn't, and he just stood there. It's like, why didn't people run up and tackle him? They do it when somebody throws a shoe at somebody. They tackle the guy. Right. The guy has a gun and shoots one person and stands there. Everybody scatters and leaves. It's like, what? And now, I can't explain the cameras not moving. They were on tripods. That would explain why not all of them, but most of them were on tripods, and that would explain the stillness of the camera not moving. The ones that were handheld, I have seen one handheld. It didn't show that much. But, getting back to the thing, it was all staged. You expect to see this on your local cop show at night, and then follow it up later. It's ridiculous. It didn't really happen. Or if it did, it didn't happen the way they said it. And just reviewing that, I don't see anything. The viewer discretion is advised. Why? The man fell down. That was all that happened.
And also, if anything's to believe, and maybe this is part of the narrative, and we're coming into a break, I just want to make clear when I'm talking about the Berlin Christmas market alleged attack with the semi-truck, I have not seen any of the dead bodies. They've only shown a couple. They didn't show any of the direct aftermath. But also, getting back to the Ankara incident, because we're coming into a break in about a minute and a half, if this is to be believed and taken at face value, I would guess the appearance, if I were to buy into this narrative that they're putting out there, it looks as if that Erdogan and Putin just took out a political rival or someone who knew too much, or they just they just made somebody a sacrificial lamb to take the focus off of the Russian hacking into the election in the United States, which has just been made official as of about 2 hours ago, which now Donald Trump is officially the president-elect, and that is tainted according to the mainstream news narrative. Now, we've been in completely, covering this Russian and United States connection and about how the same Jews control Russia and the United States. And all one has to do is look into that guy. I think his name is Beryl Lazar, who's the head of the Chabad Lubavitch in Russia, and how he leads the other Jew, Vladimir Putin, around. But we're going to get into that on the other side, Glenn. What do you think about that, how it appears that everybody's talking about Russian hacking, and now everybody's talking about Russian government being the victim of some sort of crazy thing that is related to Syria? Well, we'll get your thoughts on the other side. Hey, I'll be back with Glenn Sutton. Dorsey coming at you, and I've got Glenn Sutton on the line, and we're discussing the alleged assassination of Andrei Karlov in Ankara, Turkey. He was the Russian ambassador to Turkey. And of course, also happening the same day, it was a alleged attack through use of a semi-truck on a Christmas market in Berlin, Germany. And the alleged driver was arrested and the passenger dead. I also want to point out, there's so many connections to these two events. The ISIS war on Christmas. I was talking to Amanda earlier, Glenn, and she said, I was like, I need to come up with how to put this all together. And she just said, hey, maybe ISIS war on Christmas. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty good.
I would agree. It's a narrative. They're doing all this stuff because you asked before the break. I believe it's more. It goes along with their game plan. You make Russia a bad guy, and then they're trying to start a new Cold War with Russia, and getting China involved in it. And we should really be going after China, not Russia. But that's beside the point. And they use these things to. They know that everybody's starting to feel good because of Christmas.
Hold on one sec, Glenn. We all know that there's no difference between the same folks that run the Russian government, run the Chinese government, they run the U.S. government, and
well, they all run the same. It's all controlled by the same cabal. Yeah, and it's just
right. So I just want to make sure we don't confuse folks. I know you know this as well, but this is. Our enemy is all the governments of the world, including ours, because it's just basically one government. And I do want to segue into that, but hey, didn't mean to cut you off, but I did want to be very clear about that, because we know that the Chinese government is controlled by the Bank for International Settlements and the Rothschild.
Yeah, it's all the same cabal all over the world. That's one world.
Right.
One world government. It's the same people. But there are other players involved, too, that they control through their monetary system. But the people still do the things on their own. So,
sure.
It's human. It's not all it's a big discussion to get into later. But getting back to my point, they're doing this because they know that you're starting to feel good about Christmas and the holidays are coming up, and they want to put all this fear into you. So they do all this stuff now, because they did it during the summer. You would forget about it, and plus they did it to distract from the bullshit that's going on with the elections here.
Yes.
To pull away from, because you always watch news. What's on the news? Distraction from what's really going on in the world.
Well, Glenn,
they use this as a distraction.
I want to get your thoughts on the fact that a lot of folks were all excited, and also, negatively or positively about the idea that members of the Electoral College in this we're going to go against the results of this staged and rigged election. The election results were and it wasn't even close to happening. And it just makes me think that they had to have some sort of distraction to kind of like,
to pull away from to pull away from the other distraction.
Story, because the story was really getting very, it was building to a climax, and they had to keep it from climaxing and kind of just brush it under the rug instead of having it a climax. And then by doing that, that's why Russia was involved in this. That's why because Russia, over the past, 2 weeks, they got 100% of the blame as to why the American people don't have any idea what on earth happened during this last so-called election. Because nobody can make any bit of sense out of it. Because they tell us that one candidate, and we know, you and I know more than most anyone, that they can just make up these numbers at every single step of the way, from the precinct to the Associated Press, who gives the alleged official word as to who wins the election, and every step in between, especially when these state board of elections, like we've talked about over and over again, but that's fine. We need to say it over and over again to have it sink in, that in Virginia, to hack in to the state board of elections, according to Northrop Grumman, who runs the Virginia elections through the Virginia Information Technology Association, the VITA, they had their own report in which they stated, in order to hack into the Virginia elections machines, all control of all the precincts in every city, in every town, in every county, in the entire state of Virginia. And Virginia is not the only place that the password to get in was ABC123. So now we have to blame some sort of clandestine Russian operation. And these guys don't even have to hack into anything to change the results. They can set the machines in a certain way. Yep. And if they set it wrong, they can hack it in. And if they set it wrong to say, look, it was set, the machine was set wrong, they could hack in later and have that be, the red herring that everybody chases down that rabbit hole, and hack it at another point, one step later.
Well, not only that, you can just get the AP to hack the fucking election at the get-go and put out a fake.
That's what we were talking about. That's
what we were talking about. Put out fake shit. It's like, it's so stupid because there's no way to verify any of this stuff, because they erase it, they destroy it, they don't take it, they just make it up. So, you just make something up. How are you going to check it? Well, you can't. So you got to go with what's there. And that's pretty much what we're doing. We're going with what's there.
Glenn, you and I talked about the NBC, the Chattanooga, Tennessee NBC affiliate that put out the election results showing Hillary Clinton winning by 2%. And then after the election, at first, I really did. I never went back on anything. Basically, you can't be wrong when you say everything is rigged, and whoever's going to be worse is going to be the one that they put in. And, there's so many variables. I said I thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and this is all according to the things that they can make up out of nowhere. Your vote doesn't mean a thing. Everybody knows that. If you don't, you don't know anything. So the narrative says Hillary Clinton wins by 2%. That's what the AP results show. And the actual results of the election show what? According to us, according to the made-up numbers that they gave us after the official recounts and everything, Hillary Clinton wins by 2%, right? But Donald Trump wins the election. So those AP results that they put out early, they seem to be very accurate according to the numbers that they put out to the public that they made up to be the official results as well.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you can make something up, and if you hold to it, people believe it, but it doesn't make it true. It just makes it what they put out there. And that's what, getting to this war on fake news. Where was this war on fake news 3 decades ago when they were doing this shit? Where was this? All through my life, all I've heard is fake news from the news media narrative. And then I got into the press and found out the media is full of shit. And everybody needs to know that. The media is full of shit. They tell you what they want you to hear. They tell you their narrative. They push their narrative that way, and you believe it. And then people like me that tell you the truth and show you documents and proof and manuals, they go, oh, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. And everybody goes, oh,
Glenn,
well, don't listen to him. So what?
Glenn, they started using the word conspiracy in
I know,
regard
when I was
to today's event very shortly after it happened, asking who else was involved in this conspiracy to kill Andrei Karlov besides Melbart, Mart, Altinados, whatever the guy's name is. I saw, it was one of the guys in the Renegade think tank, whatever it's called now. I mean, I find everything confusing, and when things switch up, I find it confusing. And but anyway, somebody put down, I think it was either Rainier or Hugh, and if it was another person, I apologize, that his name, it translated from Google Translate, this assassin meant something like gold stone or something like that, which I thought was interesting. But in any event, everything is so confusing about what really happened with this election, to the point where folks who are really paying attention to everything can't even really make heads or tails of it. But we know it's all staged because we see the telltale signs, and there's no evidence of what they are asserting. So basically, I have to see evidence of something to believe that it actually happened. So Glenn, you mentioned like a closed set. How many of these staged news events with security services and police and at times violence, how many of these closed sets do you think we've been on together? Like dozens.
Together, quite a few. It was been probably close to about 50.
We've been to a lot.
Maybe more. We've been through a lot, and in my lifetime, I've been through more. So
absolutely, and we see what happened
since 2012. I mean, I documented it. It's got to be over 50. Okay. I'm going to say over 50.
All right,
it's enough that we know.
Say 50. That's fine. So we've been to lots of them. We have literally hundreds of hours of video, and sometimes I will, break down Glenn's video of 5 hours of these staged events, which literally, very few are willing to sit through and watch. But we've got it all. So just when you see this exciting part that proves what we're saying from this event that we've been through, you have not. I'm not making accusations, but I'm just saying to folks, there's not many folks out there. There's not hardly any people out there who aren't working for the government inside of these events who have seen this more than us. We have a special talent for spying on these government agents and exposing them. And then we have also the courage to confront them with our guns on us. So we're not scared of any of these events taking place around us, because if we were in Aleppo, allowed to operate the way we normally operate, that wouldn't have happened, because some guy pulls out a gun and starts waving it in the air and waving it towards a crowd or anyone else in a small room, man, I'm not going to go into that room until I'm ready for that to happen and ready to unload my gun on that individual. So these things, they make everybody afraid of it. But if we just operated under the Constitution, there would be no way that these fake shootings would be believable to anybody, because everyone would know, hey, in any sort of gathering and situation, there are armed individuals. Hey, and if you're worried about going out, you better pack your gun. Hey, and if you're worried about going out and you don't wish to pack your gun, stay at home. Because we're not going to make ourselves a sitting duck or, fish in a barrel because the government wishes to disarm us. And we have individuals believing that these staged events actually took place. Now, the police and the security services, they will really assassinate folks, but they don't like folks talking about that. They don't do that stuff publicly. They don't get that on camera. That's not the way that works. Glenn.
That's another thing. This was all caught conveniently on camera, and he played right through the camera. That was a setup. I mean, people don't do that in real life. You could shoot somebody. You're not going to stand there and go, "Oh, I just shot him," and I did it because of this. You shoot him and run away. I mean, come on, because you're afraid to die. And I'm calling that one total bullshit.
Hey, that was pretty well blocked, don't you think? That was the blocking on that was nice. He knew where every camera angle was, and he gave a nod to each of the different cameras. Like it was some sort of well-produced television show.
Let me make sure I get my rant on each and every one of them so they can see me plainly and know, and make sure that it's Allah Akbar. Yeah, right. Who does that? I mean, yeah, some people might, but the normal people, no, they don't do that. It's bullshit. I can't say much about it because it's bullshit, and I don't play well with bullshit.
Fair enough.
I get tired of
that's cool.
I get tired of these things.
Obviously, it's something that
have a real shooting, have somebody really murdered on TV. They won't play it.
That's right.
It just disappears. And they'll cover it up and they'll show the aftermath. They won't show it. That's another way to know. They won't show the real stuff, but they show these fake.
That's another thing. Okay, so everybody has except for me. I can't even get phone calls anymore, and but I can text, so it's all right. But just about everyone has a video camera on their phone, and everybody's constantly taking pictures of freaking everything. Do you think that there were not thousands and thousands of individuals pointing their camera and taking pictures and taking video at that exact same moment where that truck did whatever around that
where's the video
market in Berlin, Germany?
Yeah. Hey, where was that dude, Gutjahr? Where was he at? Why was he filming?
Gutjahr there. Hey, where's Richard
Gutjahr's
video of this attack?
Yeah.
And you know what was really funny? I gotta have some sort of thing with my brain. Watching sports and sports analysis, and it also is an exercise for me because all of this is connected, because we know that these child rape rings, they're inside of FIFA, football, soccer, the NFL, the NHL, professional wrestling. Has been covered a lot lately. But I noticed the other day that I was watching ESPN FC, and they were showing the European standings for, around their midseason for the football. And Nice, France is in first place in one of the major European football leagues, soccer. So Nice is in first place. And I said, oh, yeah, well, no wonder Nice is in first place, because they, just like in the U.S., where they rig these football games and NBA basketball games and Major League Baseball games to fit in with all of these false flag narratives, Nice, France, in first place in the Group A French League. I forget what they call that, or I'm not able to pronounce it properly. But in any event, this is just like Nice, France. And, yeah, where's Richard Goutyar? There was video of the Nice, France thing. And so it's real funny that, hey, there should have been lots of video from all these different angles if what they said about Nice, France really happened. But what they did show is that there were a lot of extras, crisis actors, running and laughing during the alleged Nice attack, that the truck was driving very slow, that a moped attempted to, get in front of the vehicle, but not very hard. And it just looked fake. So, of course, they're not going to show a video of this thing. And I wonder, I've seen pictures from Berlin, and it's showing the fact that the truck is kind of stuck behind a light post, and it is directly in front of a tent that's standing up. So I just, I'd like to have somebody, and I'm sure somebody's going to make some great videos breaking down the pictures of both events and how they don't add up. But I'd really love to hear from the callers, and I'm hoping that David's going to call in, too, in the second hour. David Dotrieve, I want to get his thoughts on this as well, and we're going to get more from Glenn. Call-in numbers, 747-222-8807, and we're talking about these staged Operation Gladio events. Andrei Karlov, the Russian ambassador to Turkey, in what seems to be a staged assassination by a alleged 22-year veteran of the Turkish security services, Mert Altanatas, I think is how his name's pronounced. And this ISIS war on Christmas in Berlin, Germany, at the Christmas markets. And I must say, we talked a lot on Saturday's wild card about how we would wish to have dual citizenship with our ancestral homeland, just like, actually, in a legitimate way, but as the fake Khazarian Israeli so-called Jews, ours would, in contrast to what they have in Israel, ours would be legitimate. Our ancestors come from Europe. Europe seems to be a very nice place. Anything that's really culturally American is culturally European, for the most part, or the main parts of it. I think European and American culture must unite. And I think that the German Christmas markets are, from what I've seen, and I've never traveled to Europe, I'm not a wealthy individual. One has to be a wealthy individual in order to do that. But it seems like it should. The Christmas market is so much better than what we have here. That every aspect of what still remains to be culturally European in Europe is superior to this Judaic Masonic culture in the United States. And one thing I'd like to make clear to folks as kind of a response to those folks who say, yeah, the founding fathers were Freemasons, and the founding fathers were this, and the founding fathers were that. And look, hey, one thing we do know about the founding fathers, the so-called founding fathers, and the overwhelming majority of the United States, and all those who were considered the body of the people when the Articles of Confederation and the militia clauses and the Constitution for the United States and Declaration of Independence, maybe a percentage of these individuals were Masons, Freemasons, but all of them were Anglo-Saxons. So when one attacks a percentage who are one thing, they're basically attacking everyone, and they're putting it into this context of, oh yes, of course, we can't have the Constitution. That's bad. The Constitution is bad because it was for whatever excuse they have it. Anyone who wishes to destroy the Constitution, especially Freemasons, they'll go on this radio network and attack Freemasons and say, hey, it's because the Constitution was written by Freemasons. But they leave out the most important part, and that we are all culturally the same, that's our ancestral law. That's European common law. Glenn, we got about a minute and a half to go before the break. Going into the first hour, finishing the first hour, going into the second hour. What are your thoughts on that? The fact that basically our cultural heritage is under attack, and it's more serious than it sounds because this is our way of life and our law, which protects us.
Well, they're basically trying to destroy our culture so they can destroy our way of life. You destroy the culture first, then you come after the people, and you get them dumbed down, and then you go after, and then we're something else. They're trying to make us into the new America, and those of us in the old America don't want it. I don't want to live in America with a K. I'd rather have it with a C and get back to the Constitution. They're getting rid of the Constitution. They're getting rid of our way of life. They're getting rid of our culture. You got to have this dumbed down, stupid shit now that they're pushing, and that's what they're doing. And it all ties into Agenda 21. And I'm just going to leave that one right there.
Well, hey, that's a good segue into the next hour, Glenn. If you're up for it, I'd like to get into some of those info dumps with Agenda 21 and 2050, 2020, 2050, Operation Conus Base, UWEX 16, because that's what we're seeing. This is asymmetrical warfare being carried out in these Gladio operations, and that this is a military operation. I'd like to get into the military-industrial complex and actually also the DARPA net, because we're getting all this information basically through computerized sources, and we all know that the Defense Department invented and started the internet. Hey, join us on the other side of the hour. This is Militia Intelligence Report on Renegade Broadcast. Hey, welcome back, everyone. It's a man called Chris Dorsey, and my guest tonight is press correspondent Glenn Sudfin, also of the Virginia Militia. Sometimes folks ask me, hey, who's filming those videos when you're in those like crazy situations, when those like cops are attacking you, or like you gotta like haul ass away from some sort of bizarre, dangerous situation? I say, well, I would say most of the time that's Glenn Sudfin, and so he's the special guest tonight on the Militia Intelligence Report, and we've got founding member of the Louisiana Militia, and I know that there's a documentation to prove that he can make that claim. David Dotrieve just joined us. David, welcome to the show. I got Glenn on the line as well. Are you with us tonight?
I sure am, Chris. And thank you for bringing me on as usual. I mean, I can't
to do so.
I can't brag on you guys enough about what a great pleasure it always is to be interacting with both of you. I consider you, Chris Dorsey, and Glenn Suffin, have contributed more to this so-called great country than probably anybody I can think of in my mind right now. And I mean that because everything we do has no ties to the deep state, to the banks, to the tribe, or to any other form of control mechanism. We're immune from it. We're letting the world know that these artificial constructs written up in legislation and put on paper, no matter what state you live in, is criminal, and it's immoral, and it's just plain wrong, and we recognize it. No matter how many people can't see through that right now, and I'm very happy to be able to help mirror that for everybody, and I encourage everybody to do the same. I mean, Chris Dorsey and Glenn Suffin, they're not necessarily what you would call a genius. Anybody can conduct these tasks. Anybody can be armed with a camera and a gun and go up against the federal government or any government, any one of these structured sources of evil. Anybody.
Hold on a second, David. Honestly,
go ahead, Chris.
I wouldn't encourage just anyone to do what we do. This is dangerous work.
Yeah.
But
I don't call
I
staring
will
down a
say
gun.
that when we go out there and there are other individuals like this, we don't lead anyone into any dangerous situations, and we know what we're doing, and we know what to say. We know what the law is. We know information that these guys that we're going up and confronting, these public officials, these millionaires, billionaires, government officials, cop commanders, FBI special agents in charge. We have dirt on them. And we also, there's a look that I give these individuals. And some folks would say this look that I give individuals is like a death stare. But I say it's more like a don't make me give you my death stare. And that's enough to make these guys shake. That's why they operate against individuals like ourselves the way they do. Because, I mean, that's if you're in a position of power and you wish to get rid of a Russian ambassador to Turkey and do it and really do it, that's not how it would be done. Just getting back into these false flags today, just for a second. But I do thank you, David, and I like to also take this time to thank some folks on YouTube. And I wish I'm very computer not savvy. I attempt to spend as little time on the computer as possible and still do the work. Not for any other reason than the computer, the more it works, the more it shuts down. But the Greatest Story Never Told TV, I'd like to thank them. I'd like to thank Johnny Gatt as well for putting out a lot of the information. I really appreciate what you guys do and the videos that y'all are making, and encourage anybody else, if they wish to use anything from Richmond Peace, RVA for Peace, anything that I have on my site that Glenn has that is like hours and hours of footage from these staged events that we've been to, so we can go out and tell you firsthand, hey, we know that this is staged. Even when we see it on television, we know it's staged because we've been on these closed sets many times. So, and again, what we're going to focus on for the second hour, we're going to focus on these operations that are underway. Don't be afraid of this martial law because it's, or martial control because it's here. Don't be afraid of asymmetrical warfare because it's here. This is the worst that they can do to us right now. This is the worst that they can do, or else they would be doing something worse. Because they can't throw everything at, everything has to be measured for them and for us. Our response, it's measured. But very soon, they're going to have to start responding to us again. And we're going to get into how we circumvent these operations where they have spent trillions of dollars and have, battalions of every security agency, police force, so-called intelligence agency of the military and a so-called civilian government operating and carrying out this warfare against the people. And they're doing it right now. It's not something to come. It's something that it's a hot war right now because they may do these wars between nation states now, but the only real war that's active right now, we're told that the most powerful militaries on the planet, they're all engaged in war in a nation state, Syria, that is about the size of North Dakota, and they've all been engaged in this war for together, coordinating attacks and also coordinating strategy. And now we're told it's worse than ever, and that every one of these major militaries on the planet working together can't do anything but make everything much worse. So what we're seeing now, I should say, without going too deep into the weeds with this, is everything's going right as planned for the governments of the world, and it seems pretty clear what's going on. Hey, I'm going to go to Glenn real quick. Glenn, what are your thoughts on that premise that this is just according to plan, nothing is really going screwy with them, and if one... Go ahead, sorry.
I would have to say it's not going according to plan. Their plans aren't going the way they want them to because it's all starting to tatter around the edges, but they do have a consolidated force in Syria. That is the main battlefield right now, but they've got battlefields all over the planet, and they're working them. And getting back to what David said, I encourage people to use your phone and photograph cops doing stuff. You don't have to get in their face. You do it from far away and be careful about it. Yes, get out there. You got the computer. You got your phone. You got all the stuff I use. I hardly have anything, and I'm doing it. So,
right.
Like he said, they don't need to get involved in the situation, but they can film the situation from far away, and you still get what needs to be done.
Thank you so much, Glenn. You're 100% correct, and I did not give enough context, and I thank you very much. What I was attempting to say is don't do what I do. Yeah, don't individual to do what we do. No, don't go up and get in their face like I do. But yeah, but film everything. If you see the police, film all interaction with any government official. If you're calling to complain about an outrageous gas bill or electric bill, record the conversation. You never know
use their
what
technology against them.
Yeah.
Use their technology against them. They gave it to you. Use it for what they use it for and return the favor. That's what I've been doing. Absolutely. And I encourage people to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, do it. Do it. Film everything. Film all cops doing anything all the time. Film all government agents, anything that they're doing. And, hey, if you see some sort of event that takes place like some sort of semi and is driving through a big crowd of individuals at a Christmas market,
Definitely
hey,
film it.
hey, don't turn off the picture of the excellent wooden incense burner at the Christmas market, or the awesome nutcracker. Just move the camera over and follow the loud noise and the alleged carnage, because I really just don't think that. I mean, I would bet that there were hundreds and hundreds that were live feeding from that location. And it's what?
Yeah,
19 days? December
Richard
19th.
Gutyar won't be there all the time to film it, so it's up to you.
Yes, Richard
I just had to
Gutyar.
say
Hey,
that.
great line, David. Glenn brought up
Excuse me.
Richard Gutyar earlier today, but that's a great line. Hey, Richard Gutyar's not always going to be there. He's not always going to be there, so you better be ready. And it's silly. It's silly to think that folks fall for this. But what else are they supposed to think? They don't know what to think, so they're just going to listen to what they're told. And what we're doing is, and folks like that, it doesn't matter. They'll listen to anything. So I don't really, in a grand strategy, we're talking to the vanguard of the vanguard. Basically, who we're talking to at Renegade are very informed individuals, whether they be average civilians or average people from all around the world, or whether they're government agents and they are monitoring our activity. They are informed individuals. So I'd just like to make very clear how they get this done, how they do all these operations, how they can do these false flags involving, entire schools, seemingly, or in the United States, in Europe, is because there are so many, I should say, citizens in the United States employed by government agencies, government contractors in the field of homeland security and intelligence. It would blow your mind how many individuals are employed by your local sheriff's department. Then look into how many are employed by your local police department. Then look into how many individuals are employed at your regional office of the Department of Homeland Security. Then look at how many contracts with non-government agencies that they have. And look at the growth in government jobs and the shrinking of private sector jobs, and the growth of private sector jobs being 100% dependent on government financing or government subsidies. Like we mentioned, Northrop Grumman is the largest employer in the Commonwealth of Virginia because they control the entire IT infrastructure of the Commonwealth. And the second largest employer is the state and federal government. So that shows you how they can do this thing. And they say, like, well, how does everybody keep their mouth shut? Because if they don't, they'll lose their job, and worse. And they don't even consider the worst part, because they will keep their mouth shut just to keep a paycheck. The average American is very dishonorable and stupid, and will play dumb if they're not stupid enough to actually fall for whatever they're keeping their mouth shut about. David, what do you think about this? And I want to get Glenn's take on this because Glenn and I have talked about this a lot over the years. What do you think about the fact that these intelligence agencies and these false flag operations and the connection between the media, local government, non-government agencies, military contractors, and all of them are involved. Like G4S Security is involved with a lot of these staged events, from the Orlando shooting to events that that shut down the final game of last year's Premier League between Manchester United and Bournemouth. There was a connection between the Orlando shooting and that. They trained for the event at Old Trafford, and then they carried out the exact same event. And when I say they, I'm talking about G4S Security Services and others. So what are your thoughts on that? It's very easy to keep this stuff, at least firsthand information, under wraps somewhat. What do you think about all this stuff?
It's a lot to take in for somebody who's just learning it. Not to say that I am. I mean, I've been in the I've been awake to a lot of you can say false flags since about a year and a half ago, and I tell you true that as far back as 3 years ago, when all these mass shootings started popping up out of nowhere, I immediately thought in the back of my mind, something's not right here in the entire history of this country. You're telling me that now, all of a sudden, these individuals from every little neck of the country just randomly start going around shooting up the wrong people. And like I said, I tell you true. I used to tell myself it is as if they're being staged for some insidious agenda. So it really blew my mind.
This is not
my,
new.
My predictions were true.
This is a tactic that has been used since the dawn of humanity. And as you exactly well put it right there, David, it's just repackaged. And so there's a funny thing also. I think we just had our 60th murder this year in Richmond, and in our neighborhood. And when I say my neighborhood, I live about, I would say it's about a mile away from Glen, in the same general neighborhood, and about, I would say, 60 yards from my house. As far as I know, I heard that the guy had life-threatening injuries and was shot in the chest about 50 yards from my house. Didn't hear anything more about it, but usually, unless they announce that he's recovered, they try to keep the deaths quiet. And there was a neighborhood meeting where the police showed up a couple days ago, and I read the synopsis of the meeting, and they were talking about robberies, break-ins, and gunshots around the neighborhood. I thought it was pretty funny. They're like they're saying, like, hey, there was a murder like 50 yards away from the house, and that's not that unusual. Like I said, 60 murders so far this year in Richmond, which is it's not a very large city. Maybe 200,000 people live in Richmond, Virginia, according to the statistics. Maybe 230, 240,000. And so there's lots of murders, more than one every week. And there's lots more than that they cover up. So they describe this murder, malicious wounding that is rampant around this neighborhood as gunshots. Glenn, you've witnessed this, violent, murderous city literally firsthand in a well-documented case. And the media tends to keep a lid on all the real violence, which they're directly involved with, and they're directing. But the fake violence, they wallpaper all over every media source. What do you think about that? Because if you didn't hear, some guy was shot in the chest like a week and a half ago on Clarence, right where the Dollar Store parking lot meets the sidewalk, almost in front of the first house there. But anyway, what do you think about that?
Well, first off, I think it's sad this guy got shot. But
of course.
But it happens. So they do this to keep their records. They're more worried about their records than they are about people here. I noticed for a fact they will not report real stuff, but they'll report petty little shit, or they'll try to reduce the crime. It's called reducing crime by not reporting it. They don't report it. They go out and listen to somebody else, and they try to make everybody a criminal in this joint here. And, I'm losing my train of thought here. It's
basically the police are 100% dishonorable.
Yes. Definitely dishonorable. They don't report stuff. They manipulate. They make up stories, or the thing did not happen at all, and they just say it did. It's the same thing. Fake news. They're getting back into the fake news. They're just pushing the fake news as real, and the real stuff they bury so that you don't hear about it.
Hey, Glenn, real quick, because we're going to go into a break here in a couple minutes, and I'm going to give the number again. It's 747-222-8807. So how many times – this is another thing. Whenever they do actually report on something, it's never accurate. Because my experience – and this is why I thank God for the video. I do. I literally give thanks and praise to God for this video, because it displays how much of a bunch of liars the news media are. Just in things that involved me, that I have video evidence of, they will print in the Richmond Times-Dispatch or speak on the radio or on television words about events that involved me or centered around me. They state things that are 100% contradicted by the video. So whenever you see something, I look at the video of actually what happened, and I completely disregard what anybody says about the video, except to point out that every single time the video and the photographic evidence contradicts what the police, the government, and the news media are saying. Every time. That's false flag debunking 101. When you see the Solomon Brothers building, aka Building 7, standing in the background, and then you see multiple reporters, including a BBC reporter, stating that this building that you see in the background has been demolished and has crumbled to the ground. And then, after that has been announced, the same building crumbles to the ground. One would have to be an idiot to not think that every aspect of this story is silly and stupid and is provably false and the least likely scenario. And then when you investigate every other aspect of every other story, that's what we get over and over and over again. And it goes down to the local level as well. They're all dishonorable. And when we talk about these guys doing this Jade Helm operation, whether it's local police working with the Department of Homeland Security and the NSA and the FBI and so forth, all these guys, the leadership, hey, this is our requirements that we're putting out there. If you're at the mid-level leadership, you got to turn on your bosses now.
Welcome, this is a
and we're going to get into our strategy on how to neutralize
And this time of
inside our
year,
government on the other side. This is Chris Dorsey.
we are so very sorry.
Right back.
There is little we can do but swat them. She didn't beg, or not enough. She didn't stay when things got tough. I told a lie, she got mad. She wasn't there when things got bad. I never ever saw the northern lights. I never really heard a cluster flies. Never ever saw the stars so bright. In the farmhouse things will be alright. I never ever saw the northern lights. I never really heard
Are
a
you
cluster.
up until 4 in the morning, photoshopping Donald Trump's head onto scenes from movies to share with your fellow shitlords? Do you actually believe that the Jews don't run nothing?
These Jews don't run nothing.
Do you say things like this?
There's no stopping us. We're taking that Jewish puppet master and we're saying, look, bitch, we're making this puppet do what we want.
Or this?
They are building the wall by March.
Well, we can help. The Renegade 12-step program for Trumpaholics is a tried and true method for bitch slapping you back into reality.
No, I'm with Israel 100%.
The first step is admitting you have a problem. The rest is all downhill from here.
Well, I wonder what it's like to be the rainmaker. I wonder what it's like to know that I made the rain. I'd store it in boxes with little yellow tags on everyone. And you could come and see that when I'm done. When I'm done. I wonder what it's like to be a superhero. I wonder where I'd go if I could fly around downtown. Yeah. From some other planet, I get this funky high on the yellow sun.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Chris Dorsey talking to Glenn Sutphin and David Dautrieve. We're covering these false flag attacks that happened today. The Berlin Christmas market attack, where the driver was arrested and the passenger in the alleged attack was killed at the scene, according to reports. And also, of course, Andrei Karlov, the Russian ambassador to Turkey, was allegedly assassinated. We've been talking about how the video seems like a television show, and it didn't seem like forensically anything that would normally happen at the scene of a real murder through use of firearm. We don't see any of those telltale signs. And, of course, that was Andrei Karlov, murdered allegedly by a 22-year veteran of the Turkish police / security services. And we've been talking a lot about our response, what our response ought to be to this, and about how they're scaring us into thinking that this is some sort of future event, that these things are going to come to a head, and that at some sort of future time, we're going to be in a lot of trouble here in the United States. Well, we already are. David and Glenn know more than anyone. If you have a bunch of guns and you think you're some sort of gun control or gun rights advocate, you're not. The government, if you were any sort of threat to the government, they'd already taken your gun away from you or attempted to steal and take away your gun, like they did to me, like they've done to me numerous times. But it's fine. I've always got a gun. No matter whether they think that they've taken my gun or not, I always have one, and could always use more. I mean, I have a gun right now, and we're working out on other things right now to get the militia rearmed properly with a camera, with a safely functioning camera, and the correct accoutrements and tools in addition. But this stuff that's going on that we're seeing, this is their overt actions of warfare, and we know that this is kind of taking the Russian ambassador murder and the Christmas market, which is very important to point out that there's a lot of Turkish people in Germany right now. Germany is not what it once was, with the ethnic background, just like most of Europe. But there is such an inordinate amount of Turks in Germany, so that's another tie-in with these attacks. So I want to go to Glenn and then back to David, but I want to put this out to anybody listening as well. Number 747-222-8807. We're putting them on notice, and the electors in this rigged election just came back, and according to this stuff that they just made up, I think probably 60 or 70% of the population didn't even bother to vote. But they're telling us that the guy who's going to be president got almost 3 million less votes than the other worst candidate in the history of presidential elections, and they're all criminals. Everybody who runs for president is a criminal. And these seem to be the two worst. And that if we're to believe these made-up numbers, about 25% of the population approves of the government, about 10% approves of Donald Trump being president, about 10% of the population approve of Congress, and that at the same time, we're supposed to listen to anything that any one of these assholes has to say about a freaking thing? Have you guys thought about that? Has anybody out there at listening at home or in the car or on their phone, wherever they are, have you thought about the fact that you don't have to listen to anything that the government says? That's what I do. That's the only thing that I've ever done. Is they say one thing and I say, "Oh, really? That's what you say." Did you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, government official? Oh, you did. Then the rules are, I make the rules, and you must be amenable to me, because I'm one of the people, and I know that God creates man and man creates government. And even if we had a so-called democracy, which obviously this is the prima facie evidence, 100% foolproof evidence that this democracy is a sham. It's a sham. But even if we were going to abide by the rules of a non-sham democracy, 25% of the population approving of, or 90% of the population when it comes to Congress disapproving of how the government functions, that means that the government has absolutely no legitimacy. And we're not even talking about how AIPAC, the Israeli Jewish lobby, runs the government, and that the Russian state-owned atomic energy corporation Rosatom controls 20% of the uranium mined inside the United States, or the Secretary of State the Secretary of State nominee for the new so-called President of the United States, Donald Trump. I mean, he changed his name to Donald Trump. Funny. Who's so obviously compromised more than any other individual possibly in the history of humanity, has his Secretary of State involved in a $500 billion deal, which he, the Queen of England, Donald Trump himself, Rex Tillerson, Vladimir Putin, the so-called Queen of England, that they'll all benefit so immensely financially from. And we as the American people are supposed to sit back and go, oh, they're getting ready to pass all these laws about anti-Semitism. I guess we can't call out the Jews anymore, or we're going to have to worry about it. Oh, they passed a law saying that that they're going to take our guns away and that you can't film the police. I guess we better stop filming the police. Because these things are not lawful. They're unlawful statutes. It's not even proper legislation. Proper legislation must be constitutional. It must be lawful, or according to the Constitution, if it's not constitutional, it can't be law. It can't even be legitimate code. It can't even be legitimate statute. So I don't know why everybody is so worried about what these guys are going to in the future do to them. They're already doing everything that they can do. So don't just sit back and take it. Get on the front foot. That's what we're going to do. David, I'm going to go to you real quick, and I'm going to talk to you about AIPAC, and I'm going to talk to you about the new ambassador to Israel, this guy, Friedman. Very funny, Friedman, Israel. And this guy, he wishes to move the capital to Jerusalem. He wishes to expand the settlements. And he wishes to push the Khazarian Ashkenazi Jew supremacist agenda. What do you think about that when, after every other thing that this joker, Donald Trump, has done, now he does this? What do you think about Friedman?
Well, I think the same thing about Netanyahu, about all the other kosher cabinet members they have before them in this other two-dimensional creation, a strip of land that they claim to be as holier than thou. I was under the impression for quite a while that, maybe they might just throw Israel under the bus because of all the negative publicity it's been receiving. I tell you, I got into these sort of topics on what Renegade hits on is because of you got left-wing sites that we know for sure are federally funded, such as Veterans Today. I mean, which is basically out in the open. They're saying, "Hey, we're a bunch of veterans who still have ties to the deep state."
Wait. David Swanson's not a veteran, but he does have ties to the deep state, for sure.
Yeah, correct. But like I said, there's so much of this anti-Israel propaganda that is coming into the mainstream light by now. But yet, at the same time, I really see, like you're saying, the absolute push for this greater Israel between, it shows on their flag. They want the land between the Nile and the Euphrates River with the stars between it, and with this Syria plan, which I see hostilities really being amped up there, and all of this, what you just mentioned, going on in Israel. I mean, they're not hiding it anymore.
David,
this is almost like
hey, we're going to connect a couple dots real quick. Okay, so Turkey is is, I mean, they're running these pipelines. You know, they're putting these pipelines down to go from Turkey through Syria and a lot of that. Glenn is familiar with what we discussed on Al Alam television with the strategic pipelines involved with this operation. We also know that Israel, this is part of the greater Israel plan to destabilize Syria, to create, and of course, Iraq is, you know, Iraq, there's active war in Iraq and Yemen as well. And, you know, of course, some African countries, you know, gluts of Somalis and other African war zone refugees and others are piling into Europe. But they have to go through Turkey because Turkey is the gateway to Europe. And so Turkey is the one that can control the flow of migrants into Europe. And of course, when the migrants flow into Europe, that's part of this white annihilation agenda and or European ethnic annihilation. Maybe we can use the word genocide, but you know, I would say annihilation too is a good word to use. So we've got all those things tied together, and we have operations, intelligence operations that snagged Dennis Hastert and other members of Congress into these child rape blackmail rings. So we have Turkey and Israel working together, and this is all part of the greater plan to move a bunch of non-Europeans into Europe. And also, hey, we don't want to just act like some of these folks aren't victims, because most folks, they don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to leave their ancestral homes. They don't want to have their, you know, it's a pain in the ass to, you know, have a lease be up in an apartment and have to move from one part of town to another. Imagine if a war forces you to do it and you got to lose everything and you got to, you know, walk into, you know, through multiple countries to get to a place where you can even have a safe place to sleep or something. So there are lots of victims in this, but this is a total Jewish operation. This is a total operation to destroy Europe, to destroy America, and it's going as they plan, because they're getting ready to open all this stuff up and they're building all these pretexts to make everything just the whole order to just be thrown out the window, even the new world order thrown out the window, and they're going to come back with something even worse. Glenn, what are you thinking right now about why it is that they decided to target this Russian, and before everyone was focused on the Russian hacking and the Russian bombings in Aleppo, and now the Russians are kind of looking like the Russian government is kind of looking like the victim here. What do you think about that as kind of a misdirection?
Well, that's what it is. It was misdirection to pull away from the bullshit that was going on with the elections. And then you've got to pull away from that. So, you know, hey, an assassination. And it leads into their next step because, you know, you pull Turkey in and you pull all the things that all these players into it. And then the word you were looking for was democide.
Democide, yeah, thank you, yeah.
Democide, because that's what it is. It's a government killing people. You know, democide. The government is murdering people. It's part of their plan. It's all part of the Agenda 21, and part of it's going great. The other part of it isn't so good.
Well, hey Glenn, I mean, they certainly have. And when I say hegemony, when I'm talking about I'm talking about the government officials, the owners of the major banks and reinsurance companies, the owners of the major military and energy corporations and media. They're doing well. They've got their Pax Americana, just like they talked about in the project.
Oh yeah, I mean they've got money coming in and everything, but
right.
Part of their plan is falling apart, and they're trying to salvage it. And they're pushing. They're pushing right now. That's why they're they're pushing it, and they didn't get established what they wanted to establish, so they got to keep going with the agenda and not fix it, and that's going to break it.
Well, I hope so, Glenn. But I'd also like to get your viewpoints on what I was saying earlier about how this is. It's not surprising, there really aren't that many whistleblowers, and pretty much everybody is employed by the government to one degree or another here in the United States, this socialist Soviet republic that we have.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we're no longer the quote unquote democracy, because we got socialism, we got communism, we got the oligarchs rule, Plutarch, all that stuff coming in, and it's all combined around and mixed around, and it's going to fall down. And I hope it does. I really do. I want the whole thing to fall down, because we need to restart it. We need to shut it down, get rid of the government, and reform it, or do away with it altogether, because I haven't seen any good for it yet.
Well, I think that's a good segue. We've got about a little less than 10 minutes to go in tonight's show, and I want to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and I've spent many years studying the Constitution. What I like to study now is the precursors of the United States Constitution. I like to study ancient European law. I like to study Roman law. I like to study all laws and find the logic in it, because I have to operate under logic. I operate under belief and logic, and a combination of those two things I advocate for all, but I can never get away from the fact that simple enforcement of the Constitution would do everything that you said, Glenn. It would annihilate this government. It would neutralize the government immediately. It sets forward how in our founding documents set forward how we're to go forward with replacing this government, and what specifically is the punishment for the individuals who are in the government right now, and what the punishment is for the government officials right now for the actions that they're taking, which is the most egregious of which, I should say, is war against the people. So we've got a lot of announcements. Glenn and David and I have been talking a lot about this AIPAC militia muster, and how we're going to, confront directly those who run this government. AIPAC runs the government. Hey, many years ago, myself and some others, we organized a demonstration against the Bilderberg Group when they were meeting in Chantilly, Virginia. We're going to go back to about the same general vicinity, a little bit, south and east of Chantilly, to parts of Northern Virginia, around as close as we can lawfully get to high-level government offices, and put them on notice while armed that this Jewish-occupied government is no longer going to stand. We require that they lawfully start deconstructing themselves, and if they don't, we're going to lawfully deconstruct them. We're going to start talking about lawful actions. We're going to start talking about every act of lawful resistance and lawful offensive actions that we can take against this criminal government. And of course, we can't bring our guns into Washington, D.C. safely. So we shall not. We shall not bring our guns into Washington, D.C. like that actor that's called Edgar Madison Welsh. Or the actor called Adam Kokesh. We're not gonna do that. But when we're in Virginia, as part of this AIPAC militia muster, in front of probably the most powerful building in the world, the Pentagon, which is located in Virginia and subject to Virginia law. And we're going to enforce that law. I mean, I have family members that work there, and they won't even speak on this subject. They won't even speak to me because they're scared. They know that they'll only lose when I discuss with them their crimes, and they know that I'm recording them while I'm doing it. So when I haven't talked to my brother Ben in a while, or his old lady, the daughter of British citizens who has a much higher clearance in the Pentagon than my brother, who's a lawyer who gives top secret clearance, allegedly. So, we may include those guys in this operation too, because they got pretty rich off of their criminal operations. And we're going to do everything lawful, and we're going to do everything publicly. And folks are going to use their real names, and we're not going to use disguises. So everything that you see, these right-wing and left-wing activists, these Black Lives Matter folks, or these these Tea Party individuals do, we're going to do the opposite of that. David, we're running out of time. Any last thoughts? Because I'm going to get your final thoughts, and then I'm going to go to Glenn. So maybe if you can sum up your thoughts on tonight's program, today's events, the events of the last few months. Just give me your thoughts.
Well, what I've been wanting to say all night, every time the subject of false flags is brought up, I always try to make sure everybody keeps in mind that a false flag event, to me, doesn't really necessarily mean a terrorism or anything that has to do with it being man-made. I've always leaned towards weather as well. People who listen to this network are no strangers to knowing that part of this warfare against the people is weaponized weather, and I've seen it. I didn't see it at the time, but during Hurricane Katrina, I sure as shit saw what essentially life could be like if there is a so-called major false flag event all over the country. And I've talked several times about these warehouses and supermarkets, how I strongly believe that they can be processing stations because, for instance, when the Red Cross came by giving out stuff to the hurricane victims, these Target and Walmart parking lots were essentially used as staging areas, setting up all this tech. So there's a lot of space in our department stores for a reason. I mean, I really believe everything is already strategically in place for them just to give the word one day. I mean, if they haven't already done it by now. But like I said, it's the hammer's coming down, and the
hammer's coming down right now. Sorry to cut you off. I want to get to Glenn real quick,
ahead.
And I do want to say a lot of this stuff is going on underground. These underground military bases. There's underground tunnels.
Correct.
and also roads, train tracks, all sorts of high-speed travel is going on underground, under where your feet are. And this is a great point with using Targets and Walmarts as staging areas. And also, they've got ways, and this fits in with the Pizzagate and the child rape networks that every leader of every industry around the world is involved in. Glenn, we've got about a minute and a half to go. Thank you so much for being on tonight. And David, thank you as well. Glenn, you want to close us out, and then I'll sign off. Any thoughts that you have? Anything you want to get out to the people tonight?
Yeah, just look into these events from the day as false flags, as psyops. Don't believe them. They may have happened. They may have been killed. I don't think he was, but just take a look at it and keep an open mind about it. Look at it. If it doesn't look right, then it's not right. If it looks like a TV show, it's a TV show. It's not real. And hold everybody accountable for what they've done.
Absolutely. Hey, a great show tonight. My thanks to Glenn Sutphin. My thanks to David Dotry. As always, thanks to Kyle and everybody at Renegade. And, hey, we'll be back next Monday.